buildings age and become dilapidated, machines wear out, people die, but what live on are the brands.
The future is already here, just not very evenly distributed.
Okay. Oh, so there's a limit of 3 hours for the room.
But it'll only be on for only an hour, so it should be good.
Okay.
Okay.
So when one of us is talking, do we need to turn off our individual microphones, or is that something from the back end can do?
Yeah, I think each of us have to manually turn it off.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because I live in the jungle, so you might hear some bird cries.
Yeah, that's true. So don't be surprised if you hear like a
guys coming round to do the mosquito fogging over here.
That's true.
Just had it this morning, thank God. It's over now. Otherwise, it would have been smoke coming up. And
part of the
you still might get the birds.
That's fine. As long as there's
it'll be a
dogs or anything.
When you're talking about the easy riders, the Harley Davidson.
Oh, the
guys.
Harley Davidson, yeah. But those sounds are a lot better compared to the motorcycles noises from our building, because our building is like really next to the street side.
Right, yeah.
Oh, you're in the office. You're in GoWork. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the
I
office.
thought you were at home. Okay.
No, my home don't look as good.
Okay.
Okay. We'll start in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin, you're like a double agenting right now. You're doing 2 jobs. So you're a content and SEO coordinator, but now you're also host.
Yes, I'm
Nice.
in charge of both. Juggling.
You're in charge of what?
Data. The content and SEO of GoWork.
Oh, I see.
But it's
So
pretty much hand in hand with each other. So
yeah, you manage the social media outreach. You write everything and
not without help. Like my team are amazing at writing as well, so I feel relieved.
How many have you got on your team?
The ones that write, we have about like 4 to 5 people, and they are amazing writers, so can back me up pretty well. Yeah, all I do is just read the data and see if the people are actually reading what we write.
Okay, and that's in English and Bahasa.
Yeah, both languages. Yes.
Yeah, and your writers, they can write easily in either English or Bahasa, is it?
Yes, some are amazing in English. Some others are super in Bahasa. So.
Okay, that's a good combo. When's the next one, actually? I'd forgotten when. Is it on the date? Is it 29th?
29th, yes.
Yeah. Which is you and Colin, right, Wera?
Yes, it'll be me and Colin.
Yeah, okay. And there's a question mark over the third one, or?
Yes, still question mark on the third one. I'll have to check back with you and also Livia on the third session.
Right.
Did you get enough sleep? You're yawning.
Sorry. Yes, I didn't get much sleep.
Oh, shoot,
Stressed
really?
about this webinar. It's our webinar debut, actually.
Sure. Yeah, there's the sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear that?
Yeah.
What? Oh, there. Yeah, I had it.
Yeah.
Is that you?
Yeah, that was from
Is that your side?
our office. Yeah.
Did you say the area is called Ambil? Ambil.
The what?
The area where the office is.
Yeah.
You said it was called
Kamang.
Ambil? Oh, it's
No,
Kamang.
Kamang.
Kamang, right.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're good to start. If everyone's okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Good luck, everyone.
Okay, good luck, everyone. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar today, Branding, What's the Big Deal? Roadmap for your Brand. And my name is Kevin. I am the Content and SEO Coordinator for GoWork. Well, GoWork is currently reimagining the office as a safe, flexible, and agile space to work in. You can learn more at our home on the web, which is go-work.com. And a disclaimer before we begin, the whole session will be conducted in English. You can ask questions throughout the whole session in the chat tab. You can see it on the right side of your screen, and we'll be sure to read your questions and answer them in the Q&A section at around the end of our webinar. There are no bad questions. However, we only have so much time, so we can only go through some of your questions. Unanswered question, you can probably direct it to our amazing speakers, if okay. And they'll be sure to answer it later. Okay, also, I wanted to tell you that we are holding polls. We have some polls that you can participate in. It's also on the right tab of right part of your screen on the polls tab. You can check. We want to ask in which industry do you work, maybe FMCG, brands, hospitality, etc. And we also wanted to know if you work from office or from home. And now we would like to play a video about how GoWork is creating a safe environment to work in. We're going to start the video. Okay, if you want to learn more about how GoWork is prioritizing personal space, member safety, and mental preparedness for the new normal, you can visit our website, again, go-work.com. And now we can start with the webinar for today. Again, the polls that we will be holding throughout the session, you can participate in it. And before we begin, I would like to remind you about the background of today's webinar. Branding is one of those confusing words that seem to have a million different intentions. So what is a brand and why is it so crucial to business success? We will discuss how we can build the right brand image in the minds of consumers and staff, as well as ensuring ways that work out for you. How brands can build value both in terms of their own equity and the success of your business, a whole platform. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce to one of our speakers, Andrew Thomas, the Creative Director of Equus Singapore. Hi, Andrew. And,
Hi.
Hi. With over 30 years of experience in the branding and design industry, including 10 years in leading UK branding consultancies, Andrew is the founding partner, lead consultant, and creative director of Equus. He has developed hard-won expertise in both brand consulting and identity creations, working with clients across Europe and Southeast Asia, ranging from startups to market leaders, from luxury to logistics. His awards-winning creative leadership over the years has put Equus on the global design industry map.
That's right.
Yes. And our next speaker, Wirawan Herdianto, Client Services Manager of Equus Garam Partnership. Hi, Wira.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
I see that you're online from GoWork today.
I am. We're back in the office.
As the Client Services Manager of Equus Garam Partnership, Wirawan champions the ongoing development of Equus' approach for the Indonesian market, contributing to the consultancy's commitment to help craft authentic brand experiences. With over a decade of experience, Wirawan has worked with the leadership of some of Indonesia's most respected organizations, approaching a wealth of business challenges in new ways. His experience encompasses a variety of sectors, including luxury, hospitality, telecommunications, professional services, F&B, and FMCGs. And now, for the company profile, Equus has partnered with Garam of Jakarta to introduce Equus' extensive branding and design expertise in the Indonesian market. This partnership represents a synergistic union, bringing together the international level branding services, creative skills, and brand reputation of Equus with the local insights, design skills, and production capabilities of Garam. Including event management, the partnership therefore delivers a depth and range of integrated capabilities to deliver end-to-end solutions. Andrew and Wira, maybe you wanted to add something for the audience?
Wira, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Can't hear Wira.
Yes, Wira, we cannot hear your voice. Maybe you are muted.
Sorry, I turned my microphone off. Yeah. So I think Kevin described our partnership perfectly. So we've been in partnership with Equus for the past 2 years now, I think, right, Andrew, or going to 3?
3 years. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's 2018, but we're working together before that as well.
Before that as well, yeah. But Equus has been in doing branding with Indonesian companies long before 2018. And for
20
Garam
years.
also, yeah, Equus has been doing some business with Indonesian companies for over 20 years. As for Garam itself, we've also been in the business right about sort of the same time, a bit younger than Equus. So Equus is more senior than Garam. We're more the teenagers.
That's very kind. Rather than saying
Yeah.
Andrew's a lot older than me, say Equus is more senior.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in Asia
So yeah,
maybe. What?
No, go ahead. Go
Asia
ahead.
29 years, I think. 29 years, which really ages me. I'm from London as well. I used to work in London as well. So if you do the math, it turns out pretty like serious numbers. Yeah.
There you
I'm
go.
a Londoner, born and bred, but been in Asia for almost 30 years.
Yes, and not to mention that they are also our member in GoWork Kamang 10.
Yep.
Yep. Happy
Okay.
tenants, right?
Happy tenants. Exactly. Yeah. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Before we proceed, I would like to remind all audience that you can ask questions throughout the session on the chat tab at any time, and we will answer it in the Q&A session. And now, I'm going to give the stage to Wira. You may go ahead with your part.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Kevin, for the intro. So good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to talk to you about branding. So today's session is more about branding 101. And this is sort of the first series of several other series that we plan on doing together with GoWork about brand and branding, including brand strategy, and also how brand can help during these uncertain times because of the COVID outbreak. So aside from Branding 101, we'll also take a look forward, and mostly in Andrew's session or in Andrew's part, he'll take a look on how branding may be defined in the future. And what we hope to achieve here today is to get ourselves warmed up again as we go back into the new normal, to start thinking about our brands and the things that we can do to elevate the values of our brands during this transition period, and also preparing for the future. So everyone's been talking about branding nowadays. In Indonesia specifically, we are seeing an increased appreciation towards the general preference of branded goods and services. But I think there is sort of a hype in branding, and that not many people truly understand what branding means and how it could work and how it could be used to leverage or strengthen your product and services or your offerings. So one way to look at branding is if we read at what the former boss of United Biscuits, Sir Hector Lang, said, buildings age and become dilapidated, machines wear out, people die, but what live on are the brands. So here's an example of how this works. So if you guys think of Michael Jackson, he's no longer with us, but he left a legacy, probably making more money for his children than he did in his lifetime, apart from his music. And then there's also David Beckham, once a very famous football player. But his brand is so strong that even after he retired, that he's still able to have countless endorsement deals beyond football or soccer. And also think of the late Steve Jobs, how he himself has such a great and deep impact on the DNA of Apple that even after he passed, Apple is still much related to Steve Jobs and his philosophy of design and product development. So that's a way of looking at it in terms of what brands can mean. But if we look at how it's applied into a certain product or services, maybe some of you are aware of the 2018 bankruptcy of Sariwangi, the famous tea brand in Indonesia. So what's the story behind here is consumers feared that because the company declared bankruptcy in 2018, that the brand would simply vanish. But because of the value, of the strong value that Sariwangi brand has, Unilever decided to acquire it and help the brand lives on. So regardless of the parent company, the brand was still saved. And 1 year after the bailout from Unilever in 2018, in 2019, the value of Sariwangi increased by 3% to be valued at over $400 million. And from what we see there is, how is that possible? How was a brand that was bankrupt at that point able to get a higher valuation after it was bailed out? So one thing that we can learn from Sariwangi is in its history, it's been able to develop clear and consistent messaging where it always highlights the role of tea in providing a time for families to come together. but also it stayed true to its brand promise. It's not just talking about the tea. It's not just talking about the taste of the product, but it's inspiring feelings of togetherness. It's always focused on tradition, but it's also not only just talking on a national level, but also between families and friendship groups. So that's one example of how a brand is able to live on beyond the company itself. So what exactly is a brand? To understand this, we try to come up with what it's not first. So bear with me. We have 5 brand and branding myths about branding. So let's talk about that first. So myth number 1 is whenever I go into these kind of sessions and ask the audience, how would you define a brand? What do you think a brand is? A lot of people would always go, it's a name and logo. That would be the first impression or the first thing on the top of people's minds when we ask what is a brand. It's not wrong, but it's not completely correct. The way we see it is a logo is merely a symbol. It's not a brand. But however, a logo does have a function. It's meant to identify, not to explain. So you are able to recognize it, but it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. So a logo itself, it has to be functional, it has to have aesthetics, it has to be infused with a meaning, but also it has to be timeless, it has to be durable. So like some of the well-known brands that we see on the screen. So a logo itself and a name mean nothing. They're just a representation of the brand as a whole. So when we talk about a brand, it's the entire experience. It's a collection of touch points that what makes a brand. Now, myth number 2, a lot of people fear, or they fear branding because they think it's only for big companies who sell consumer goods. Well, that is just not true. We could start to see that in Indonesia alone, there are more brand-minded goods and services being developed early on from inception. So new businesses like Voyage, BLP, Krakatoa, Demi, or Bird Greens in Indonesia, though they may not be well known to everyone yet, but they are starting to establish a following of their own because they sort of infuse value into the brands and the products that they offer. Now, moving forward to myth number 3, that people don't care about B2B brands. This is also not true. As simple as because whether you are B2B or B2C, the nature of any kind of transaction, be that a goods or a product or services, it's always a B2P. So we say it's business to people. We're always trying to sell, or we're trying to connect from person to person. Now, branding has its position at the very heart of a company's philosophy because brand is what the company is. That's our view of it. And most B2B brands aren't utilizing branding to its most optimum potential, in our opinion. Currently, we're seeing a lot of B2B companies, or a lot of companies, are utilizing branding as just a way to get recognized or to be differentiated by the way they look. However, there are a few steps above the ladder that can help unleash the full potential to help grow these businesses. Now, myth number 4, brand is a product of services. So this is also not entirely correct, though products and services are part of what we're trying to sell by using brands. But we're not, when we think about branding, we're not talking about the products, how we sell it, how much should we sell it, where should we distribute it. Those are sort of the marketing aspects of the goods and the offerings that companies have. And a way to think about it is think of the brand Muji. Their brand strategy is never about the product itself, but it's more about a philosophy of being natural without name. It's about being simple. It's about being earthly. And that sort of philosophy had helped them to grow beyond its core product and services. So they have retail products, they have restaurants, they have outdoor products as well, they have home products, and they have a hotel as well. So they've managed to utilize their brand strategy to help them grow beyond just a specific product and services. And the last myth is myth number 5, we are in control of our brand. So whether you like it or not, when our product and or services is released to the public, and deliberation or not, a brand is automatically formed. So people, once they interact with something, they will build a perception. They will make judgments towards that product. So no matter what you do to control your brand, the fact of the matter is a brand is largely shaped by your consumers. And the best that we as brand owners can do is manage it or work together with our consumers so that the perception and expectations established are aligned. So here are 2 examples of that. One is, I don't know if you guys are aware, but there is a so-called World Nutella Day that's celebrated every February 5th since 2007. So now this sort of tradition started off as from a fan who she wanted to popularize the brand in the US because it wasn't available. So she made an annual celebration for people to share their love of Nutella, by sharing recipes or moments through a website. Now, this sort of initiative from a fan was sort of initially, there were reservations to begin with from their parent company, Ferrero Corp. But having learned that what this brand meant to the blogger named Susan Russo and what this sort of World Nutella Day can be moving forward, they sort of learned to work together and they sort of accepted that they weren't in full control of what their consumers feel about the brand. So that's just one example. And another example is Harley Davidson. So Harley Davidson, if you guys don't know, their loyalists are one of the most hardcore compared to other brands. And the fact, a lot of data shows that Harley Davidson tattoos are ranked as the 2nd most popular tattoos in the world after mom tattoos. And I think it's because these loyalists, they sort of adopted that identity of the open road freedom and that sense of independence that Harley sort of established. Though the brand may not have condoned or sort of endorsed people to get Harley Davidson tattoos, this is something that in the end, Harley Davidson highly appreciated from their audiences. So how do we define a brand? The way we see it is how a brand is defined has and will always evolve. It will continue to evolve. What it does shift in parallel with evolving consumer behavior, and what it does is it shifts with the evolving consumer behavior and values. Now, Andrew will talk more about what branding will mean in the future, but before that, let's sort of talk about what it was and what it is. So indeed, what we're coming to realize that in this increasingly more competitive economy with a lot of competitive choices, branding is perhaps in its simplest form the only way to differentiate from one product from another. We could sort of see how some industries at some levels, they use colors and visual graphics to establish distinction. I think this is something that we could still sort of see being done in the LCC industry in Indonesia. So people aren't loyal to the brand, they're more loyal to the price, and the only way to differentiate one from the other is what color they are. But then, as more brands come out, more brands sort of become to look alike, it becomes a sea of sameness. So branding evolves more to become a means of connection by infusing value to identity. So despite having similar looks and feel, we as consumers trust them to be different. And something we could sort of see when we look at these 3 brands, banking brands. So there's like Mandiri, BCA, and Citibank. we could agree that they sort of have the same product and services, but when we mention one over the other, we could sort of feel they are different. We perceive them as different. So today, it's not only about understanding how brands can help differentiate by the way they look, but also when we talk about branding, you have to understand that it's not only what your products can do for your customers, but also what it means for them as well. Take another example, Vans, the Vans brand. So for those who are not familiar with Vans, though I doubt it, I think Vans is one of that culturally related brand globally. So it started off as a skateboarding shoe company, but now it becomes more of a global action sport fashion brand. But outside of its fashion offering, what the brand is actually promoting is self-expression in youth culture. And it speaks across interests. So it's no longer talking about just a specific sport. And that enables the brand to sort of connect with people of all ages and different backgrounds because it's sort of a symbol of the youthful spirit. So Wally Ollins once said that branding is the outward and visible demonstration of private and personal affiliation. So it's sort of a posh way of saying that we select brands based on our personal style. It's an expression of ourselves, and it helps us define us in a way from the people reading it or viewing us when we interact with it. So how does a brand work? So you have to understand that what your brand is, it's not only what your brand is, but also what it stands in the minds of your customers. If it's good, don't mess with it. You have to simply find the best way to exploit it and sort of enhance it. We could learn sort of what this means if we take a look at the Garuda Indonesia experience. It was an unfortunate experience back in 2019. Garuda as an airline was supposed to represent the epitome of Indonesian hospitality. You know, from the moment they make flight reservations until their arrival at the destination, passengers of Garuda Indonesia are supposed to be pampered with sincere and friendly services. Not only that, Garuda Indonesia is also a flagship carrier, so it's important not only for the people flying it, but also for the people of this country. It's greatly important. But instead, in 2019, it failed to deliver on its brand promise and showed inability to sort of respond to critics. So this is something very unfortunate. If you don't truly understand what it means in the mind of consumers, you take what you do for granted, and that will have a negative impact on your brand experience itself. To understand branding, we could also take a look at the hierarchy of human needs by Maslow. So in this pyramid-shaped hierarchy, it puts our primary needs like food and shelter at the bottom, while our increasingly more complex needs like security, a sense of belonging, love and fulfillment are ranked progressively higher. Based on his observation, if our physical needs are met, so the higher needs are revealed and come into play. So in other words, when your needs for food and shelter and security are met, you will automatically think about higher needs such as self-fulfillment. And we see this hierarchy work in the way commercial branding has itself evolved since over the past 150 years, where our basic needs have become met with food, health, security, and education. So we have come to expect more from our brands, not only in terms of how they make us feel, but also what values they represent. So in that respect, brands that respect our higher needs and develop products that address those needs will be able to differentiate themselves and rise above the competition, which means that brands themselves have to develop some personality and even a conscience to succeed on top of the physical attributes which meet consumer needs. So pulling together all these insights on how the human mind builds a brand, how do we start building a winning brand? Well, there are many ways that we could sort of view this, but we try to simplify it into just two important steps. So step 1 is to know yourself, and then step 2 is be consistent. So if we go to step 1, I think one of the things that we need to understand is there's more to a brand that meets the eye. I think this goes back to my initial statement where people, when we ask them what branding is, they see it as something visual, something that they see. But that's just on the surface of it. The real brand sort of lies what's underneath it. It's sort of your DNA. It comprises of your people, the experience you have, the tone of voice, what your vision is, the kind of values that you have, and that is sort of what really defines a real brand. And all brands consist of 3 elements. So just like humans, it has a rational element, which is the body. It has an emotional element, which is the heart, and also it has a spiritual element, which is the soul. So to define this, the rational element or the rational component of a brand is sort of the physical or body of your brand, and its concerns are mostly its physical attributes. So if it's your company, this will define your purpose, capabilities, and size, as well as the tangible benefits you bring to your customers. If it's your product, this will describe its functions, its features, and how it benefits your customers. The second one is the emotional component. So this is the heart of your brand, and it describes your personality. So this is what can provide the greatest differentiation, because the personality of a brand is very difficult to copy. It also describes the intangible benefits it provides to its customers. So in other words, what emotional reward does your brand offer, and how does it make your customers feel? And the third element is the spiritual element, which is sort of the soul or conscious of your brand, and it describes the values you stand for. So if it's a corporate brand, this should describe the values you live by, for example, the ethics of your business, how you nurture your staff, your CSR outreach, or your attitude to the environment. It should also sort of describes the moral benefits your brand brings to customers by creating a sense of shared values. So here's an example of a brand I hope to be relatable to our audience today. So if you think of the brand Airbnb, so what does it offer rationally? It offers convenience and value for money and options when you go to choose accommodations for your travels. So that's the rational element to it. However, the emotional element to the Airbnb brand is it has a collection of the so-called authentic and local lodging choices, and it makes users feel that they have a sense of exploration and discovery, but also it makes them feel at home more than staying in an establishment. So that is sort of the emotional appeal or this emotional element to the Airbnb brand. Now, spiritually, when we talk about the Airbnb values, like in any organizations, it's grounded on something that's universally experienced so that it's recognized to be true by the audience. So done this way, it resonates well more than it is being bought into, and it's not being seen as something corporate or a brand overreach. So if the values derive from an experienced truth, then its experiences increases the chances that you land on something that is yours and yours alone. So that's sort of the thinking on when you have to develop or you have to think about the spiritual element of the brand. So what Airbnb was able to do it drilled down into emotions that drove their loyalty, into her stories that identified their audiences, reasons for using Airbnb that went beyond transactional. From hosts that say, I need money, and Airbnb is a cheaper hotel, so that's something transactional. But then there's also hundreds of different stories from helping people transform themselves from being someone shy to being someone outgoing, from someone being enabling someone to feel more of a traveler or a world local instead of a tourist, and also helping someone discover their inner adventurer by discovering hidden parts of places he visited because Airbnb enabled them to do. So the spiritual values or the spiritual elements of Airbnb is it welcomes people and it creates a world where anyone can belong anywhere. So that message was simple and clear, it's easily adaptable, and it helped them decide everything more easily moving forward, from how they recruit, what kind of product and services that they can develop, sort of what, even down to how their offices can look like. And in a separate session, we do talk about how Airbnb's spiritual elements help them navigate through COVID and making hard decisions, and also thinking about the future of their brand. But that's something we could talk about in a separate session. So, that example underlines the importance of not only having a body to your brand, but also a heart and soul. So the best brands have a mix of all three elements because customers increasingly want their brands to reflect who they are as well. Now, step 2 is be consistent. So be consistent on its own, requires discipline. So something that a lot of brand owners and brand managers that we've met, I think this is something that needs one of the most emphasis on, that branding is a disciplined process used to build awareness, extend your customer loyalty. And also, if you want to be consistent, you have to trust the process, as it will help articulate your vision clearer, it shows commitment, it establishes coherence. And we should also emphasize that if we talk about consistency, it doesn't mean that we're repeating ourselves, we're doing the same thing over and over again. So consistency doesn't need to be rigid or limiting in order to feel like one company. It doesn't mean like you're doing the same thing over and over again. But you sort of just have to trust the process and make sure you manage your assets and your brand in an orderly fashion, in a timely way. And it's also important to understand that each brand element and each touch point is an opportunity to increase awareness and build customer loyalty. So at the heart of any brand strategy is sort of a commitment to consistently deliver on the right combination of innovation, design, and values across your different touch points. So not only from your choice of words, the choice of images, but your experiences, your interactions, those matter, and those things need to be managed consistently. So every interaction is a crucial point, because it could sort of build or undermine your brand in the future. So as I've mentioned, how brand is defined has and will continue to evolve along with our behavior and values. I think moving forward, Andrew can take over and take us to the future of branding. So Andrew?
Okay, thanks, Weira. Can you all hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. As you heard, Weira talked about what branding is today and some of the basics about how it works. What I'm going to do is looking more into the future. I'll be referring back to some of the things that Weira said, building on them, so you'll get some of the references. But basically, I'm looking into the future and about where brand is going tomorrow. Because although branding began as a tool for cattle owners originally to identify their herd, it's been on an incredible journey since then, moving on from being created by brand owners to label their products like Coca-Cola, to being co-opted by consumers to label themselves as Apple lovers do, such that today, in a real sense, brands are us, Weira, yeah. So that's what's happening now. But where is branding going next? Well, Weira, where is branding going next? So in this part of our seminar, I'll give my best guess of what branding will look like in the near future. Because the only constant about branding is that it's always evolving. So to answer this question, perhaps we need to figure out what the future is in the first place. The cyber fiction writer William Gibson once said, "The future is already here, just not very evenly distributed." It's a great quote, but what's it saying? Well, it's saying that most of what we think of as in the future already exists to some extent in the here and now. And Gibson's right, because the future of branding really is already here. What we already see around us now includes elements of what's to come in the future. Trends that are developing today, whether it's things like AR, VR, or AI, all seem to point to a future where branding will be about experience and self-realization, as Samsung's recent Moon experience in their New York home base shows. And if you recall Maslow's pyramid that Weira referred to earlier, brands are increasingly required to satisfy all our needs on several levels at once. Firstly, the level of the senses, to hear, to touch, to taste, to see, to smell. And secondly, the level of the heart, to be loved, to feel secure, to be fulfilled, to save the world. Going back to Coca-Cola, brands in the past placed a huge emphasis on claims about product performance, what it was made from, how good it was, how good it tasted, with the image of the product front and center. Whereas with the brands of today like Apple, the emphasis is much more on knowing and understanding the wants, the needs, and the aspiration of consumers. And that's where brand value is going to today, and increasingly in the future. To reference the brand guru Martin Neumeyer in his excellent book, Brand Flip, which I recommend you read, we're seeing a general shift in power from companies to consumers. And consumers today are not so much focused on product features as on brand experiences and how the brand enhances their sense of identity. Branding is no longer just about a product's image. It's about our image as well. We select images to express our personal identity. For example, Diesel, Adidas, and W Hotels, next slide, is one identity. And then Hermes, Ralph Lauren, and Shangri-La is another identity. Branding has become a statement about who we are. So as Martin Neumeyer went on to say, brands are not so much sold by their owners as bought by consumers, because the brand had already been pre-sold to them by their social media circle or an encounter they'd had of it online or in reality. And as a result of this power shift towards the consumer, I think we can see 5 emerging trends that give us an idea of what the future of branding looks like. And the first trend is this, that number 1, customers increasingly shape and own the brand. Customers increasingly shape and own the brand. Martin Neumeyer went on to say that a brand isn't owned by the company, but by the customers who draw meaning from it. It isn't owned by the company, it's by the customers who draw meaning from it. He was alluding to the fact that nowadays brands are no longer built and owned purely by their producers, but by their consumers too. In fact, research has shown that we build brands in our minds by every experience that we have of it, good or bad. So if our experience is good, we build a good brand image in our minds. And if our experience is bad, we build a bad brand image, which is why social media is so important and has given us so much power over the brands that we buy. Why? Because online we can either build them or trash them, right? So your brand isn't what you say it is, it's what we say it is, i.e. us consumers. Which is why nowadays we're living in such a consumer-centric marketplace. So rather than brands trying to explain to themselves who we are or what their products are about, today they should begin to ask the question who their customers are instead. In this world, one of the main benefits that a brand offers customers is a kind of self-realization and partnership in the brand building process. Bearing in mind that one viral video from a customer can either build or destroy your brand overnight, brand owners will need to figure out ways to partner with customers in the storytelling and curate that narrative with them in real time. Like Nutella, remember Weira said it was one of their customers, an American customer who invented World Nutella Day? That wasn't Nutella, it was one of their customers. So that's the first trend we see developing now and will increase in the future. The second is related to it, that there is a growing cynicism about social media reviews, but long live the tribe. So growing cynicism on the one hand about social media, but long live the tribe. So even as social media and online purchasing seems to dominate retail, and the power of social media influencers and online ratings is growing, we can see the limits of this influence as its independence is increasingly being called into question. When it becomes clear that online reviewers are all rewarded in some way by the sellers, how can you trust anything they say? Which is why the tribe has become so important. Remember this tribe? A tribe is a smaller circle of influence made out of like-minded friends, family members, and fellow brand loyalists, the kind of people we consult when we want to make a purchase, because we trust our tribes and are loyal to the brands that they endorse. They also give us a sense of belonging. So brands that understand this tribal dynamic will inevitably win in this scenario. Since tribes happen organically, they're perfect for growing a brand. So when a tribe forms, brand owners should recognize it, develop it, and partner with it. Which brings me to the third trend we see happening in the marketplace, that telling the brand story matters more than ever. Telling the brand story matters more than ever. With the social media revolution pushed into a kind of overdrive by the COVID lockdown, many companies are being panicked into short-term fixes like social media marketing, rather than long-term investment in building their brand. In an economic crisis, we know the first thing that usually gets cut is the marketing spend, particularly on brand building. But you know what? You can't attract new customers during this crisis and expect them to become loyal to your brand if all that you're doing is social media marketing, highlighting things like discounts. If the customer doesn't know and trust your brand already, they won't stick with you when the crisis is over. It's only brands that continue to build a long-term emotional connection with customers that will succeed in the long run, because customers reward these brands with their loyalty. This only comes about by steady, long-term brand building. So even in a time of crisis, telling your brand story consistently in a way that connects with your target audience matters more than ever. But there's another strong factor that makes telling your brand story well even more important. And that's our fourth trend, trend number 4, that values, health, and authenticity will increasingly drive brand loyalty. One unique effect of the social media revolution is in driving awareness of 3 related things: authenticity, health, and values. These are the main concerns of generations Y and Z, because they're the children of this revolution. They want brands to be authentic, which means not only that they must be true to who they are and deliver on what they promise, but also it's about origins. They want to know not only what a product does, but also how and where it was made. Secondly, they want to know about the safety and quality of the ingredients, shall we say, as well as the traditions and techniques of its production. And increasingly, they also want to know about the values of the company that produced it, to see if they align with their own values. As we discovered in Weira's talk, every brand has a personality, and a crucial dimension of that personality is the soul or the conscience of the brand. In other words, the values and ethics of the brand owner, what the brand stands for, and how they behave in the community. This is becoming increasingly important because customers, staff, communities, governments, and even lenders are beginning to reward companies who take their values seriously. Indeed, ethical values and sustainable business practices are increasingly being seen as an inseparable part of the total value that a company should create. So there we are. For example, let's have a look at The Body Shop. It's one of the world's most successful brands, values-led brands, passionately involved with issues ranging from animal rights, fair trading, and protecting the environment. And Starbucks is renowned for its fair trade policies, as well as employee care and commitment to literacy, while HSBC has become famous for its focus on the environment. We can only see this trend increasing because the brands that future generations reward will be those that look beyond just delivering a product or service for profit to be more socially and environmentally responsible. In other words, brands that are driven by a sense of a higher purpose and are working towards a better future. And this more human angle brings me to the fifth and final trend that we see beginning today and gathering pace into the future, that the human experience is making a comeback. Branding of the future will see the triumph of the phygital or physical plus digital, where online and offline customer experience fuses into one integrated experience. In the last 10 years, we've seen the decline of bricks and mortar retail in favor of e-commerce and influencer marketing and online reviews, especially during this COVID crisis. But over the past 5 years, actually, we've seen a rebirth of the physical space as an experience center, which becomes an integral part of the buying process. And although it doesn't look like it now during this lockdown, we believe this trend will increase even after the COVID crisis. Why? Because you can't tell the full story about your brand online. Neither can people truly understand what it's like unless they know how it feels, looks, smells, and tastes. Only a physical environment can offer this, which is why bricks and mortar, the human experience, really aren't dead yet. In fact, they're coming back to life. For example, Burberry's flagship store in London, opened a couple of years ago, has pushed the boundaries beyond purely retail to offer an immersive experience where walking into the store is like walking into their website. They call it Burberry World Life. And then over in New York, the Adidas flagship store offers a 360-degree VR experience where the retail brand is enhanced by delivering unique customer experiences in store. But at the same time, they're introducing much more human interaction through features like their customization station in London, where staff will personalize your trainers for you. So in the future, where your brand lives physically and how it's delivered in the human experience will make all the difference. In a future where the customer will increasingly influence the brand narrative, human engagement with the brand in a physical environment will be key to brand success. So how can we sum this all up? Well, as we see it, as we move into a world where more and more of our interactions are becoming digital, where consumers are also growing increasingly skeptical of online product claims and deliberate misinformation, brand owners will need to refocus on being authentic and human as the key to how they work. Above all, they'll need to be receptive to the evolving needs and desires of the next generation and committed to building relationships of trust with them based on the truth. So brands nowadays need to build relationships with their customers, in part by being very agile and flexible in their communications with them. So they not so much control the brand narrative as become co-creators of it with their customers. And the most successful brands today will be those who are the most fluid and responsive to change. More importantly, we believe the future of branding is going to be one that is holistic in the sense that it will be not only more of an integrated experience, bringing physical and digital together, but also that brands will be more relational and engage with their customers in multidimensional ways. Or as William Gibson would say, a brand experience that is much more evenly distributed compared to what we see in the world today. Thank you very much for listening. And if you enjoyed that, we've got a podcast out at the moment, which you can find on Spotify called Brandits. Just go there and you'll hear more of our views on what to do in branding with your brand in a time of crisis. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew and Wira, for the amazing and insightful session. So now we are getting to the Q&A session, and we have received some questions in the chat tab. We will be going through the question by the time it is sent. So we apologize again if we do not answer your questions, but however, you can still contact the speakers if you want to ask more. For now, we will answer the questions from, the first one is from Matthew Ardian. The question is, in the new normal period, how can brands ensure that what they do now will build towards increased brand love? How can they avoid being perceived in a negative light?
It's a very good question. It depends very much on what business you're in, but I mean, in general, it's good. It's very good to be empathetic. So, although you might be thinking of your own cash flow and how your orders have simply dropped through the floor, you need to stop thinking about, if you like, dollars and cents your side, and think about how it's impacting your customers, and communicate with them in empathetic ways. And maybe you can offer, I don't know, if you have long-term customer relationships, you can offer discounts, some kind of break or some kind of add-ons, value add to your current service to sort of keep them on side. I mean, and also pay it forward. I mean, a lot of companies are turning their production facilities to help out in the time of crisis. For example, Diageo, who make whiskey and so on, have used their, if you like, alcohol producing facilities to develop, to produce sanitizer bottles. And then, of course, there's Dyson, who are producing ventilators. I don't know if you're in the position to do things like that, but it's just an example of how, number one, your messaging needs to become more empathetic. And number two, perhaps you can figure out ways to sort of turn your production capabilities to good use or do good in the community to show that you're caring. You're a caring brand. Yeah, that's very important. Would you agree with that, Wira?
Yeah, very much so. I think the only thing I could add to that is, I think this is not a time for us as brand owners or as brand managers to release ads selling our products specifically just to get people to buy it, but it's more on acts. How do we show that we care, we understand the situation, we want to help our community or our tribes, as Andrew said it, make sure that they make it through the storm along with our brand. And that can mean a lot of things. It could mean taking part in the movements that people are doing to help the COVID situation. It could go into your community doing engagement. It could help them fill their time volunteering. Exactly. So there's a lot of things that they can do to engage with their customers. But I think one of the points, most importantly, is not a time to stop engaging your customers. So you still have to be there for them in any way possible.
Yeah. Does that answer the question, or is there another question you want to ask?
There are more questions. Okay. Hopefully that was an insightful answer to Matthew Ardian. The next question is coming from Boyka Pidikrishna Utama. It looks like it's more of a case study. What do you guys think about Jordan brand? Is it Nike or Jordan who increased the brand value?
Oh, well, this is about co-branding, isn't it, really? Jordan has his own brand and Nike have their brand. Did they need Jordan? They could probably have managed without him. But when you think of what Nike's brand proposition is, just do it. It's a sport brand. It's an activity brand. You need brand ambassadors who are aligned with that. So in a way, it's a question of acting out your brand promise. Just do it, sport brand, cutting edge. So you get a just do it kind of guy who's cutting edge and at the peak of his profession, or certainly was in the past, he has that legacy, to be your brand ambassador. Makes absolute sense. It's a marriage. It's a perfect marriage, really. Does that answer the question, or where do you want to add anything?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say.
So it's a good textbook answer there.
Yeah.
Question about co-branding. Okay, hopefully they will.
Co-branding. We all need to do it. I mean, we're co-branded with another agency, like Garam in Jakarta. That's co-branding, right? Where is my co-brand?
Co-branding.
And GoWork. We're co-branding with you now.
Right. And the next question coming from Charlie Colson. How can branding help and strengthen the brand purpose?
How can it help strengthen the brand purpose? Well, you know what? First of all, you have to have a brand purpose. You know, branding, the process can't really give you a brand purpose. I hope I'm not misunderstanding his question. First of all, you know, we're branding professionals, but we can't create a brand for a client. So first of all, they have to figure out what their purpose and their vision is, and then we can help them to discover how their brand can help their sort of visual brand and their tone of voice and everything they do in terms of their customer delivery can enhance that brand purpose. But I mean, I know many companies find it very difficult to articulate their brand purpose. That doesn't mean they don't have a purpose. It's just that they've never been forced to do an elevator pitch about it. So we're actually quite good at helping companies think through what their brand purpose is and then expressing it in every kind of customer touch point. You know, their sort of visual platform and their experiential platform, to put it like that. So I think but really it's much better when a company has a very clear idea what their purpose is in the first place. And then our job is to help them express that in the most aligned, consistent way, as Weera was saying earlier.
Right. Maybe Weera want to also weigh in on this, or?
No, I think Andrew said it. You know, I think the question is, how do we start understanding the brand purpose first before we begin, you know, the rest of the branding process? Because a branding process, you know, it could go all sorts of different ways if you don't understand what your core purpose is first. So it always has to start with that one anchor before we start cascading it down to the touch points and the experiences that the brand wants to deliver to sort of convey and strengthen their purpose.
Yeah. Right. I think every company has a purpose, but the trouble is they've never been asked to articulate it. That's the thing. And sometimes it's very difficult to put into words if you've never thought of it, if you've never had to answer that question before. But it is important to establish that before we start our work.
Okay. Yeah, maybe writing it down could help. Yeah.
Yeah. Or discussing it with us, sharing it with us.
Discussing it. Yeah. Usually it's a consensual build. So it's not the agency or it's not the outsider telling the company what to do, but, you know, it's about sitting together, sharing what your outside audience think and what you as the internal company or the internal team members want to establish with your brand and find that middle line. And, you know, it has to be consensual. It has to be discussed. And, you know, that way you really get a clear understanding of what your brand means for you internally and what it can mean to your external audience.
Okay. Right. We're moving on to the next question from Sabrina Haunan. How to create an emotional connection through branding? I think it's kind of related to one of the elements that you mentioned of branding. How having personality can also connect with the consumers.
Yeah. Weira, do you want to talk to that one?
Yeah, I think overall, you know, if we're talking about emotional connection between your brand and its audience, it's about, you know, having shared values, seeing that this brand is a representation of our personal belief system or our views of certain issues and topics and way of lives. And I think if that is translated well enough in your touch points, then, you know, emotional connection, the potential emotional connection will be stronger. So it's just understanding about the shared values that you may have with your audience. And I think one of the key importance to understand about having, you know, sort of that shared value is you have to sort of stick to one and it has to be authentic enough so that it doesn't come up as a marketing gimmick or a sales message. And I think that's sort of the hard part of brand development in my experience, at least. A lot of brand owners, when they want to build emotional connection, they sort of get caught up in jargons, in taglines, in ways that does not, in the end, make them feel authentic. And that's because they try to get as much as they can from their efforts. And I think that's one of the key importance is to understand emotional connection. It's like a marriage. If you're gonna partner up with someone, you have to have those shared values, and you have to have sort of a shared vision, right?
But it's important. But sometimes it's a bit like what I said about brand purpose. A company is never been asked, well, what do you think the emotional aspects of your brand are? So they can't articulate it. That doesn't mean that they don't have an emotional side. It just means they've never been asked to consider it. However, customers usually are aware of these things. So sometimes it's good to commission some sort of targeted research to find out what customers think of you. And you might find that they have some quite heartwarming stories about what they like about your brand, which has to do not so much with what the product physically does, but how it makes them feel. Like, I love drinking tea. I mean, I'm living in Asia, but my tea, if you like, reminds me of home. I like that sort of salon breakfast tea kind of flavor. I associate it with home memories. And brands that play up on that because of their authenticity probably are the ones I would go for, like, PG Tips. I associate that with my childhood, you see. So every brand has an emotional side, but you just have to find out what it is, by asking the right questions of the right people. And then just focus on that. And values, of course, is important as well. What ethics you stand for. I mean, I like Levi's, for example. I mean, because of the authenticity of the brand in terms of its product qualities, but also they stand for youth empowerment, female empowerment, and they've got a foundation that gives away a lot of money every year in developing economic empowerment as well. So I identify with brands like that, and that's another way of bringing out the emotional and the ethical side of your brand. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Hopefully, it is the answer is helpful enough to Sabrina Hunan. And the next one is coming from Shania Ratnanjani. They say I experience inconsistent. I think it says I experience inconsistency in identity when it comes to visual. What is your thought about this?
Okay. Well, that goes for almost everybody. Actually, you're not alone. You're not alone. I mean, managing your brand, there's so many moving parts to it, because it's not only about the way it looks to customers, logo, colors, typography, photography style. It's also the way you speak, your tone of voice, not only in your publications, but also when your staff answer the phone to customers. It's also how you design your service for them. Does it help them or does it get in their way? There are so many ways your brand can screw up and not be consistent. And we have a process whereby you can sit down and examine your brand, pull it apart, and find out where the glitches are, shall we say, the bits where you're not delivering an experience which is aligned with your perception of the brand. So we have a kind of 5-step process you can go through. Although, to be honest with you, if you know the processes, you can do it yourself. But part of it is just what we call customer journey. You kind of put yourself in the shoes of your customer, and you walk through a journey into your organization and out the other end. So starting with, searching online for your product or service, calling them up, emailing, going to the store. How do people what's the web experience like? What's your app experience? What's your personal device experience like? How do staff treat you? How do they invoice you? How do they treat you after the sale? What about when things go wrong? What sort of service center like? How do those staff treat the customers, and so on and so forth? So you map out a journey through your organization and imagine you're in the shoes of your customers and walk through it to find out what the glitches are. That's one very good way of finding out what you're doing wrong and giving you a clue as to how you can fix it. But we're quite good at helping customers do that too. I mean, it helps to have somebody like us on board, although, as I said, you can manage it on your own. But doing the customer journey is a key thing. It's a key way to expose whatever glitches you have.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that was the answers to your question, Shani Ratnanjani. And
I hope. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that was all the time that we have to answer your questions. Thank you very much, Andrew and Veera, for the session. It was very insightful. Got to be very honest, it was actually insightful for me.
Cool.
Well, that's good. You learned
every
something
minute of
new.
it.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, a lot. A short summary of the session. I hope I got all of the takeaways right. I'm going to read from my notes here. The first one from Veera is, what is a brand and how does branding work? How to build a winning brand, in which I learned something that's super insightful. The 3 elements of branding. Also, how to be consistent, and about the future of branding, in which experiencing self-realization is key. And the trends are consumers shape and own the brand, the growing cynicism, social media reviews, but long live the tribe. Telling the brand story matters more than ever. Values, health, and authenticity will increasingly drive brand loyalty, and the human experience is making a comeback. I think I got it all right. Yeah.
Yeah, you done well. Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, the session today might be coming to an end. However, we have more session coming up on June 29th. I think it's tentatively titled "Lipstick on a Gorilla." Again, yeah.
It's about brand strategy.
Brand strategy, right?
Yeah.
You can visit our website, go-work.com/events for information when it's released. And don't forget to check Andrew's podcast, The Brandits, again on Spotify. And also, currently, GoWork offers a promo from us. If you're looking for a safe and agile environment to work in, GoWork currently offers a 60% discount off office space solutions. However, if flexibility is the name of your game, our flexible working space vouchers is your solution. You can visit our website again to learn more. And with that, I'll see you in the next GoWork webinar with Equus. And also, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great questions. Yeah. Okay. Bye.